Good afternoon, I'm Herman Green with the Midday News. A special welcome to those of you watching on onespotmedia.com. A reminder as well, you can watch TVJ live by downloading our One Spot Media app in the Google Play Store or the App Store. That's the number 1, followed by the word Spot Media. The Justice Minister says justices of the peace will play an integral role in the implementation of the Zones of Operations Bill that was passed last week by both Houses of Parliament. Addressing the opening ceremony for the first Justice Centre in the island in St. Anne last week, Justice Minister Delroy Chuck said JPs should be present when security forces are conducting searches in these special zones.
If a person is to be detained, the police will have to convince the JP that this person is suspected, and if the JP disagrees, the man must be released. If the JP agrees, within 24 hours, that person must be taken before a parish judge.
Additionally, Mr. Chuck noted that the Mobile Justice Unit, which was launched earlier this year, will be stationed in the zone to further guarantee the protection of citizens' rights and freedoms.
So if any citizen feel that their rights have been infringed, then they go in there and explain. And if property is damaged or rights are infringed and it can be proven, then they will get compensation. This government believes that the citizen must come first, that the dignity of the citizen must be upheld.
Canadian High Commissioner to Jamaica, Sylvan Fabi, noted that his country has been supporting the reform of the justice sector since 2007 through a number of initiatives.
Canada is working very closely with the government of Jamaica to continue the work of justice reform, of bringing justice closer to the people of Jamaica.
The Ministry of Justice intends to establish 13 other justice centers across the island. And Prime Minister Andrew Holness has announced that several pieces of legislation will be revised as the government tries to tackle the crime wave. He made the disclosure at a Jamaica Labour Party meeting in St. Catharines, South Central last night.
I'm confident that we will start to see a reduction in the murder rate and in crime in general. That is just one tool in the toolbox, the zones of special operations. There are more pieces of legislation to come in Parliament, including a revision of the anti-gang legislation, a revision of the Firearms Act, plus other pieces of legislation to narrow and close out the space in which criminals have to operate in this country.
As Jamaica continues efforts to tackle crime, Member of Parliament for St. Catharines Southwestern Everett Warmington says the Jamaica Constabulary Force has all the resources to rid Jamaica of crime. He made the assertion at a Jamaica Labour Party meeting in St. Catharines South Central last night. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Andrew Holness says when the whole country is united against criminals, there will be no space for them to operate. Mr. Holness says he is taking politics out of the fight against crime. And drastic action is being considered by the administration of the Kingston Public Hospital, KPH, as it grapples with the surge in the demand for critical care services in the wake of the flare-up in violence. It is now looking at recovering some of the treatment costs from gunshot victims who have health insurance. Consultant anesthetist at the KPH, Dr. Jackson Gibson, last month told a Joint Select Committee of Parliament that between January and June 20 this year, there were 28 admissions to the hospital's intensive care unit for gunshot wounds. Dr. Jackson Gibson estimated that the KPH had spent close to $80 million to treat the emergency patients. CEO of KPH, Errol Green, outlined the hospital's next move.
Persons who can't afford to don't normally pay for hospitalization, but certainly we will have to look at those persons who have insurances to see whether or not we can claim on the insurance companies for those who have insurances and are covered by insurance.
The hospital has suspended elective surgeries and is now out of bed space due to an increase in gunshot, stabbing and motor vehicle crash victims seeking treatment. More than 400 persons have been treated for gunshot injuries at the KPH since January. A 12-member delegation representing several government entities will be going to South Korea to learn about that country's national identification system. The one-week study tour is part of the efforts to create Jamaica's national identification system. Chief Technical Director of the National Identification Project, Mrs. Jacqueline Lynch Stewart, says the tour will help all arms of government to work together on the system.
The persons are strategically chosen based on the impact needs would have on those entities. So, I mean, obviously, it would be great if we could take a lot more because there are more entities that are going to be impacted. So, but we had to be very strategic in the choice of the persons.
The group, which includes representatives from the Electoral Office of Jamaica, Tax Administration Jamaica, the Office of the Prime Minister, among others, will leave the island this Friday and return on July 22. There's a call for corporate Jamaica to do more to help with the issues affecting Jamaica. General Manager of Caribbean Cement Company, Peter Duquesne-Sluth, made the suggestion as he believes the many issues facing the country are too much for one group to fix.
The government cannot be held accountable alone to solving all the problems in the country. All of us have to do our part. And when all of us have to do our part, I mean us in the private sector, but everybody has to think always, from my point of view, what can I do to help this problem? What can I do to fix this? And by little, it means by little action that you can do, it will always make a difference.
Mr. Duquesne-Sluth was speaking at a handing-over ceremony of a community park in Hope Pastures in St. Andrew. He's calling for other entities to help communities in whatever way they can, as the help is more than the structure of program provided. Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Eastern, Favour Williams, agreed with the suggestion.
We're building a greater Jamaica, one community at a time, one person at a time, one park at a time. And hopefully, this will encourage other companies in the private sector to also follow the example. Because yes, Mr. Bellamy was right that other communities want a park like this. Well, I want to see other private companies to give a park like this also.
There are other things that still need to be done, a proper perimeter fence, and I have already approached another corporate entity to try to help us with the perimeter fence.
A national strategy for the development of statistics, NSDS, is currently being prepared for Jamaica, which will provide a more coordinated approach in producing and releasing data. Addressing a JIS think tank session recently, Director General of the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, Statin, Carol Coy, says the strategy is necessary as it will facilitate greater harmonization among agencies that produce data.
Statistics in Jamaica is produced in a decentralized manner. Statin is not the only agency that produces statistics. So you have the Bank of Jamaica producing statistics on monetary and financial areas. You have the Ministry of Finance, you have the Ministry of Education, you have the Ministry of Health, you have the Jamaica Tourist Board, the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Labour and Social Security, the Ministry of Agriculture. So there's a wide range of statistics being produced, and there's really no coordination in the production of the statistics. So sometimes you have duplication.
Ms. Coy says this lack of coordination limits the ability of Jamaica's national statistical system to respond to the demand for data. Statin will receive technical assistance from the Partnership in Statistics for Development in the 21st Century in preparing the NSDS.
One of its core programs is to support developing countries in the design, implementation, and monitoring of statistics. And what this will allow is for developing countries like Jamaica to better respond to the increased demand for data.
NSDS intends to provide the country with a vision of the development of statistics consistent with the National Development Plan, Vision 2030 Jamaica. Plans are in place for the making of a major clampdown on business operators who have not been paying trade license fees. Local Government Minister Desmond McKenzie says his ministry will shortly hold discussions with Tax Administration Jamaica, TAJ, to collect the arrears. Trade license fees represents the second largest source of income for local authorities. Mr. McKenzie says if the authorities collect 40% of the fees combined with the level of compliance with property taxes, municipal corporations will be able to meet their obligations. He says the collection drive will be aggressive, similar to that for property tax arrears. An all-island property tax team comprising representatives of the local government ministry and the TAJ was mobilized to collect outstanding taxes. In international news, it has been revealed that U.S. President Donald Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., agreed to meet a Kremlin-linked Russian lawyer last year after being promised, demanding information about Hillary Clinton. We go to the CNN for more details.
First of all, I think we need to start asking ourselves, and I think in particular Republican leaders in Congress need to start asking themselves, at what point do we stop giving the benefit of the doubt here? The evidence here of these close ties with Russia continue to mount with each and every day. But then secondly, what's particularly concerning to me is we are seeing it play out in actual policy. And you mentioned Don Jr. was in the meeting. So is Jared Kushner, who is now a government employee. He is a senior advisor to the president, an official in the government. We saw the president propose this morning that the Russian government work with the United States to create some sort of cybersecurity entity for our elections, which is frightening. We've been reading that the president is doing everything he can to stop a bipartisan bill to impose further sanctions on the Russians to punish them for intervening in our election. So at some point, somebody needs to step up and say enough is enough. And the Trump administration has to clean house. It has to get rid of conflicts of interest. And somebody's got to step in and make sure that our foreign policy is not being overtaken by Russian influence.
And we go now to sports. A blistering undefeated century by man of the match, Evan Lewis, steered world champions West Indies to the spectacular 9-wicket victory over India in their one-off T20 International at Sabina Park yesterday.
It took just one special knock to trounce the hotly favoured India as the Windies claimed victory in the Seoul T20.
The highest individual score by any batsman in a chase in T20 internationals.
After being sent in, Virat Kohli and Shikhar Dhawan were up to their usual tricks.
This time once again, in front of square leg.
The two were cruising before Kesrick Williams pulled out his book of Kohli to remove the skipper.
Settled and comfortably taken by Sunil Narine.
A direct run out bringing Rishabh Pant and Dinesh Karthik to the crease for an 86-run stand.
And he's gone for it, but it doesn't matter where the fielder is.
Quick scalps at the end, leaving the Windies chasing the imposing total of 191.
Another wicket.
Chris Gayle started brilliantly in his first T20 since the 2016 World T20 International Final. But it's not often the universe boss is overshadowed.
Ball, but now he's playing some really good shots.
But an on-song Evan Lewis made sure of that. The 25-year-old blasted 12 sixes in his bombardment, dropped not once, but twice.
And once again, there is another drop in the outfield.
He and Marlon Samuels putting the finishing touches on a complete domination in Kingston.
And he does. Finishes in style.
It was a very good wicket. I think we did very, very well to keep them to 190, especially after the start they had. Kesrick with two important strikes in the 6th over, and then the way Jerome Taylor came back and finished after the first over, which he wouldn't have been proud of, but then to finish the way they finished and to drag us back into the game. We all thought that 190 was 20 runs short, and then the batters went out there and proved that it was.
In a T20 game, every opportunity is going to cost you a lot, and we could see the result went their way because mostly of the drop catches.
Cricket, lovely cricket. And that's the Midday News. I'm Herman Green. Join us at 7 for the Primetime News Package. On behalf of our news, sports and production teams, good afternoon.